And it was so cold in the theatre that, you could see bits of sky, and when it snowed, you could see the snow coming in.
Welcome to a little podcast about the Torch Theatre, Milford Haven, how it came to be here, how it survived, and where it will be going in the future.
Philippa here, volunteer at the Torch too. Now, Carol, your history with the theatre is quite considerable, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, I suppose it is really. I'm from Milford Haven, went away to university and to work for several years and came back in 1980, and blow me, but they built a theatre at the bottom end of Charles Street. So I went as an audience member very soon after we moved back and was just transfixed by the whole notion that we now had a theatre in Milford Haven. So I was a keen theatre goer, and then I joined some local societies which performed at the Torch. So then I actually stood on the stage, became more and more involved in the place really, and was invited to be on the board of trustees. And I've been on the board ever since, which has been a great honour and sometimes a great worry, but mainly a great honour.
And you also run Artistic Licence Theatre Company, don't you?
Yes, that's right. It's an amateur group. We like to call ourselves non-professional theatre company. Right, we interviewed about 20 people for this podcast, and definite themes have emerged. The overwhelming one of which is what an incredible tale of survival against the odds the Torch Theatre's tale is. Because the Torch is at the edge of a cliff in Milford Haven, in far-flung Pembrokeshire, West Wales, right on the edge of a cliff, and it's buffeted pretty frequently by the southwesterly winds that whiz over from the Atlantic and up the Cleddau.
It's probably worth mentioning here that the port of Milford Haven is known as the UK's largest energy port. It's also Wales's largest fishing port, with about 3,000 tonnes of fish landed every year. It's also a location of great beauty, about which Shakespeare wrote in his play Cymbeline. How far it is to this same blessed Milford. And by the way, tell me how Wales was made so happy as to inherit such a haven.
And actors who come to work here agree that it's most special. Here's James Thomas, who starred in Of Mice and Men, and a couple of pantos here.
I mean, there's something very, very Welsh about it. Most other theatres I've worked for have been in metropolitan areas, and I've been touring. In fact, this is the only production house that I've worked with any regularities. Other theatres can be a bit big and impersonal, and the warmth generated is just that within the company itself. But the Torch is certainly unique in the way that it's nurtured its audience.
Okay, so it's 1977. Star Wars was launched. Elvis died aged 42, and Britain was growing into the grip of strikes. Firefighters had a national strike that autumn, and we were heading towards the winter of discontent. We've been looking into what's helped the theatre survive and flourish, and without doubt it's how local people were involved and recruited, like the actors.
The interesting thing about that early time was that the company was financed by Manpower Services, which was a job creation scheme, if you like. I think half our wages were paid by Manpower Services. So all the jobs had to be advertised in the local job centres. And I'd been to drama school and come home to Pembroke, having just finished drama school, really to get a job on a building site to try and pay off overdrafts and that sort of thing. And lo and behold, there were jobs for actors advertised in the job centre. So I was very fortunate in securing an audition and got the job. And at that time it was very important that people like Joanna Field, who was from Haverfordwest, and Philip Rowlands from Haverfordwest, were part of the company because the priority through Manpower Services meant that they wanted as many local people as possible. And of course, there are not many local actors. It was just really the three of us I was aware of. And so we all got jobs here.
In this episode, we hear from Peter Doran, Tim Arthur, Phil Rowland and Anne Leaney about their takes on the early days. One of the big surprises we discovered was just how very local the Torch was at its birth.
Well, I'm Phil Rowlands, and I was at the Torch Theatre from the very beginning in 1977. And it was an absolute joy because, for instance, Joanna Powell and I had done amateur dramatics and never ever thought that we'd have a theatre, to professional theatre to go to. And of course, Joanna was a professional actress, long before that. So that was fantastic to be part of that whole system, and also in Pembrokeshire.
And it was groundbreaking, really. There'd been no history of theatre in Pembrokeshire for ever. And so I think people were pretty sceptical of us. And you had the likes of Phil Rowlands, who was a sort of youngish actor, young, handsome actor, walking up Charles Street in a long Afghan coat and trousers tucked into his boots. So people did look upon us as these bohemians that had come into the area.
Hard to imagine a job centre advertising for actors these days. And who couldn't love the idea of Phil sweeping up Charles Street in his Afghan? But to practicalities. Tim Arthur, now artist, who had a successful exhibition at the gallery in the Torch recently, he told us about his early days at the Torch as youth club leader.
In 1975, I was appointed youth tutor to Milford Haven Further Education Centre, which is now the Studio Theatre. My specialist side was drama, because I trained as a drama teacher, but I was here to run the youth club. But behind or next to us was this pit that was slowly being filled with concrete in step form, so it was clearly going to be something unusual. I soon got to know all about the project to build a theatre, and the concept was that as a further education centre that had already specialised in drama, this was going to be a studio theatre or community theatre to boost the activities. Then, as it was being built, it became more ambitious, because what I remember was the Arts Council said in so many words, if you want it to be a really important theatre that can take touring productions, you'll need a fly tower. And instead of it being a community theatre, it developed into a bigger project. And the fly tower, in order to get the scenery in and get it out of sight, as we've got with our current show, it has to have a tower double the height of the stage to get rid of the stuff. When they built the fly tower, it happened to be during the steel crisis and the 3-day week, and the price of steel tripled in 3 months. So the project ran into a lot of financial difficulties. So that was the beginning of it. That was my first memory of it.
Interesting how significant the fly tower was, which makes such an impact on the Milford Haven skyline. So we asked our interviewees about what they remembered vividly from the early days.
When we started back in 77, that was August 77, I think the theatre had actually opened in April, but the acting company started in August. And the facilities at that stage were so basic, because I think they'd run out of money, so there was no heating in the building. It was, although brand new, it somehow was a sorry state, which we got over very quickly. Once, it's like any empty house, once you populate it and get some furniture in, it all begins to look a bit better. So it quickly became home from home, and at that stage I stayed here for 3 years as an actor.
Oh, I think probably one of the most vivid is starting off, and I think it was Nelson and Emma was the first thing we did, and it was so cold in the theatre that you could see bits of sky, and when it snowed you could see the snow coming in, and we had a real ship's rigging there, and I can remember the rigger coming in and doing it and thinking, my God, that's high, and then realising that we each had a sort of character that ran all the way through and then played lots of other parts, and mine was the young sailor, and the young sailor, which I thought was quite a nice part to have to start with. But then I didn't realise that, how quick the changes were. I'm not a singer, but I can get away with it. And I had to start with a sea shanty, which was like, that was a nightmare, the first thing you have to do. Then I had to go up the top of the rigging and sing another song, right? And my next scene after that, I was playing an old Scottish engineer. So I had to come down the rigging and change and get... And seeing people in the audience sitting in coats, freezing, but all going, we're going to make this work. This is going to happen.
It really sounds as though everyone was pulling together and being as resourceful as they could be, which is, of course, creativity in action.